It is now law in Alabama. The state has just passed the most extreme anti-abortion law in the country, one that is manifestly unconstitutional under current Supreme Court precedent by the admission of its own authors. The bill effectively bans abortions altogether, making it a Class A felony for doctors to perform the procedure, punishable by up to 99 years in prison. It was signed into law just earlier this evening by Republican Governor Kay Ivey, who has a long anti-abortion record and stood with her state party in 2017, supporting Roy Moore's campaign for Senate, even after he was credibly accused of preying on multiple underage girls. The bill was passed out of the state Senate last night by these 25 Republican senators, and if you're sensing a theme, you're not crazy. All of them white, all of them male. And 21 of them voted to get rid of an exception that had been put in the bill for victims of rape and incest. So the result is now state law that could give a doctor who performs an abortion on a woman who is raped more prison time than the rapist himself. The bill is so extreme that even some right-wing opponents of abortion are worried it goes too far. For years, abortion opponents' legal strategy has been to whittle away at the edges of abortion access by imposing medically unnecessary requirements and restrictions. But that was before Donald Trump took office and nominated 2 justices to the Supreme Court. Now, states like Alabama are attacking reproductive rights head-on, and they are very explicit about the ultimate goal. This is from a statement by Alabama's lieutenant governor last week. It is important we pass this statewide abortion ban legislation and begin a long overdue effort to directly challenge Roe v. Wade. Now that President Donald Trump has supercharged the effort to remake the federal court by appointing conservative jurists, I feel confident the U.S. Supreme Court will overturn Roe and finally correct its 46-year-old mistake. If he's right, Alabama's abortion ban could end up being the law of the land for the entire United States. I'm joined now by Rebecca Traister, writer-at-large for New York Magazine, author of Good and Mad, The Revolutionary Power of Women's Anger, and Bridget Amiri, who's a deputy director of the Reproductive Freedom Project at the ACLU, which has vowed to file suit over this new Alabama law. Let me start with you, Bridget, first on the sort of constitutional law here. We saw all these laws over the last several years, trap laws. You have to have your hallways be this wide, and to try to sort of make it more and more difficult for abortion providers to exist. This is in a different category, right, in terms of what they're doing.
That's right. We're seeing the true colors of the anti-abortion movement. For years, they have chipped away at the right to abortion, passing restriction on top of restriction, pushing abortion care slowly out of reach for many people. And now this is a direct aim. This is an attempt to ban abortions, not just in Alabama, but in Kentucky, Ohio, Mississippi, and Georgia. And this is a direct attempt to try to overturn Roe versus Wade.
You know, I remember during the Kavanaugh hearings, a lot of people were saying, like, look, this is obviously the subtext of this whole thing is Roe. Like, Kennedy was the vote that kept the Roe majority together. Kavanaugh is going to replace him. Like, this is about Roe. And there was all this kind of tut-tutting from people about, like, oh, you're being hysterical. And Susan Collins saying, well, I think, he'll listen to precedent. And now I look at this, it's like, well, someone down in Alabama didn't get that memo.
Yeah, activists have been pointing out that this is the ultimate goal of the Republican Party in advance of Donald Trump for decades. People have been pointing that out in various ways through, starting in 2010, starting before then, too, but in 2010, the rise of the Tea Party, which we were told over and over again by pundits and by politicians was about tax policy. But what they wanted to do was defund Planned Parenthood. Karl Rove, around the same time, was instructing Republicans to take over state legislatures for just this purpose, right? This has been Republican strategy for a long time, and the chipping away, which is a different strategy than this full aiming to overturn Roe, has actually, as Bridget said, made abortion inaccessible, all but illegal, for vast swaths of Americans in this country, vast swaths of this nation, where you have to travel hours, hundreds of miles to be able to get an abortion, because those chipping away laws, the closing of clinics, the trap laws, the limits, the having to wait overnight, makes it economically inaccessible in a country that practically as soon as it codified abortion as legal, passed a legislative rider called the Hyde Amendment that prevented poor women from using federal insurance programs to pay for abortion. So abortion has been becoming ever more inaccessible ever since it became legal. And there have been a lot of people who've been pointing this out, a lot of people who've been yelling about it, arguing about it, filing lawsuits about it. And we have always been told that we were hysterical, that we were being overdramatic. Nobody is really going to turn over Roe. It's bad even if they don't turn over Roe. And now we're looking at the fact that, of course, they will try to do so.
Right. I mean, it has always been, there's a sort of conventional wisdom, right, that like they're not going to try to go through the front door, basically. And I don't think it's like a crazy conventional wisdom insofar as like people do game out the constitutional strategy here. I guess my question to you is like, I mean, look, my understanding is federal courts will strike this down. It's unconstitutional on its face, and then it will be appealed. And then who knows? And like, are there 4 votes on the court to grant cert and like take a run at Roe? Like, is that basically where we're at?
That's basically where we're at. It's blatantly unconstitutional. The district court and the court of appeals in all of these places are going to strike down these bans. And then whether the court takes one of these cases and what they do with it is another question. But there are so many other cases already in the pipeline about all the other restrictions that Rebecca's talking about and that you've been talking about as well, that could present an opportunity to the Supreme Court to undermine or undo Roe versus Wade. So it's not just these cases; it's all the other cases in the pipeline.
And obviously they can pick and choose and be tactical if they're thinking, Roberts is thinking about preserving that majority.
Correct.
Right, and they might, under other circumstances, maybe they wouldn't have gone for such a full frontal challenge to Roe. But they would have been aiming toward the same thing anyway, which is depriving women of their reproductive autonomy and with it, their economic, social, sexual, professional liberty, their humanity, their rights. That's what they've been aiming for. And they'll take whatever strategy they can get. Right now, Trump and the Republican Party's control of the judiciary has opened up a new door for them, and they're trying to go through it. But they have been going through all the other doors up till now.
There was this moment in the Supreme Court recently in a case called the Franchise Tax Board of California v. Hyatt, in which a precedent was overturned, and there was a dissenting view, and Stephen Breyer was in the dissent, and he said the majority surrendered to the temptation to overrule Hall, even though it is a well-reasoned decision that has caused no serious practical problems in the 4 decades since we decided it. Today's decision can only cause one to wonder which cases the court will overrule next. Did you read that the way many did as a warning from Breyer about Roe?
Right. Well, and Justice Breyer cites Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and that was the 1992 decision that upheld Roe versus Wade. We were on the brink of having Roe versus Wade overturned in 1992, and we were able to hold on to the fundamental right to abortion, the core of it, but it was definitely whittled away in that decision. So I think that that's definitely a concern, and we are deeply concerned that the Supreme Court whether they'll abide by this decades-long precedent.
The last thing I would say here is that people, I think, fail to recognize, or a lot of people fail to recognize, that the goal is total abortion ban. Like, everyone should take seriously the actual ideological commitments of the people who are fighting for this, who are not doing it for a corrupt purpose. They're not doing it because like there's some big special interest that's like paying them. Like, this is an ideological crusade, and the people who are telling you what they believe what they believe.
Yes, you should believe them.
Yes.
They mean this. And by the way, I read Breyer's call, not just, I think a lot of people heard it about the Senate and talking about we need a Senate that's going to exert better control over Supreme Court nominations. I would also hear it as a call to pay attention to every kind of election, in addition to and besides, very much besides the presidential election. It's Senate elections, it's state legislative elections, it's gubernatorial elections, it's state houses where these laws are being made.
Yep. Rebecca Traister and Bridget Amiri, thank you both for joining me.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.